Welcome to Education in Focus. In this episode, we're joined by Michael to explore the importance of the early years and what really matters in a child's development from birth to 5. From play and relationships to emotional regulation and trauma-informed practice, this conversation offers practical insight into how early years settings can support every child to thrive. So, Michael, what do we mean by early years and why is it important?
So the early years, it's the first 5 years of that a child's been alive, basically. So for the government, they've decided that it's from birth to 5 years, and there's lots of documentation. So the 0 to 5 age range, it's when the brain is really developing, and there's going to be lots of change in as the children grow. It's all about developing the early language, emotional regulation. It's developing the social skills and the learning abilities. And a lot of early years settings, they're going to be established where children are going to be learning through play. So there's going to be a lot of interaction with adults, but a lot of interaction with children as well. So it's going to be supporting their education, their health, and their well-being, but developing their social skills so that they're learning to take turns and share. It's developing their independent skills. So feeding, it's with dressing and toileting. Um,
I think I find it really reassuring to hear that, if I'm honest. Coming from more of a secondary background, I, I I'm aware of how pressurized education can be and how it can focus on academics. And because I've never really looked at like an early years framework, I think I thought it had much more to do with kind of academic, but at that level, and to actually know that it focuses on social skills and promoting independence. I mean, it makes sense, it's what I would want it to be, but I find it really reassuring because I was worried that you're going to come on here and speak about, I don't know, letter formation or something.
that comes eventually, but for young children, particularly in the early areas of early years, there's a bigger focus on the prime areas of learning. So if you look at any documentation, it will talk about the prime areas of learning, which are physical development. So that's about it's split into gross motor skills, so lots of big body shapes, arm movements, core development. Even for tiny babies, it's all about tummy time and things like that. But it also links to fine motor skills as well. So that eventually leads to zipping up a coat, which then eventually leads to picking up a pencil, doing lots of colouring and painting, which then leads on eventually, once they get to school age, writing letters and writing the name, and then writing a word, and then writing a sentence. But as well as the physical development, it's also the personal, social, and emotional side. So that's developing their social skills with their friends, turn taking, sharing. It's promoting that independence with them as well, and also regulating their emotions so that they don't suddenly flare up if there's an argument over who wants to play with the train set, and have the particular action figure or animal, dinosaur or something. So it's teaching children through their play experiences how best to resolve conflicts as well.
It sounds to me, and I hope this isn't going to be taken badly, but it sounds to me like parenting, good parenting
It
to a certain
it
degree, because
does
isn't that what
feel
we would
like, yeah,
hope?
it does
Yeah.
feel like that.
Oh, it does feel like
But
that.
in a setting as well. So in a nursery setting, there are ratios as well. So the younger the children are, the smaller the ratio. So for 2 year olds, it was a 1 to 4 ratio, and it's now a 1 to 5 ratio. Once the children get to nursery age, so that's 3 and 4 year olds, the ratio changes to a 1 to 13 ratio if there is a qualified teacher in the room. If it if there isn't a qualified teacher in the room, then the ratio is a 1 to 8. But it's still, the children have got plenty of friends around them, but there's an adult who can lead those quality interactions as well. And then once the children get into a reception class as well, because the reception, which is the first age that the children will be in school, the ratio, there will always be a class teacher, but then there's usually a teaching assistant in the classroom as well. So again, you can have up to 30 children in a reception classroom. So it can be 1 to 30, but usually is 1 to 15 with a second adult in the classroom as well.
Again, I just go back to the fact that I find it so reassuring, because I didn't mean it negatively when I said it sounded like parenting. It's like it's in recognition that firstly, many children don't get all of the good quality experiences
hmm
through parents, which obviously is something that we hear about a lot within
hmm
adoption. But also many parents will have to work, and children need to be away from their parents. So to know that it's actually written into the framework for it to be those kinds of experiences and not the letter formation things that I had in my head, I do find it really, really positive. So thank you for explaining it. As someone who didn't really know, I found it incredibly
Yeah,
reassuring to hear.
it does feel like an extension of the family. And in the different early years settings that I've worked, that extension can also be about celebrating children's experiences outside of the classroom or the school or the nursery setting. So in the past, I've celebrated when children have learned to ride their bike for the first time without stabilizers, or when they get their first swimming badge. So a lot of families will send in a photograph or the certificate that children get, and that is something that is shared amongst their friends, amongst their peers as well. So in the same way that a family might do that celebration with grandparents or aunties and uncles, we still do that celebration as well. So those relationships between family and the educators is probably a lot closer relationship than you might get maybe, so when children enter the main school setting.
I suppose it works in parallel with what the parents are doing then, isn't it? In an ideal world, if the parents are able to provide those quality experiences and the nursery or other setting is working alongside them together, you kind of hope that child can get through those stages. Aren't there sort of key milestones, Michael, that you have to get through to sort of show that a child's developing at what might be called an age appropriate way?
Yes, so again, there's plenty of documentation from the government as well. So there's lots of age descriptors as well. So it used to be called ages and stages. Now it's the early years framework, and it has for younger children, it's the 0 to 3. So there are lots of identifying milestones that children would be expected to hit as they're growing through their first 3 years of life. The next stage is 3 to 4 years, so that would predominantly be children at nurseries and preschool, and then there's the reception band as well. So that's the final year of the early years foundation stage. So that will be predominantly for most children their first year at school. Obviously, there are some schools that have a nursery as well. So there are some children who spend potentially, it could be from a term up to 5 terms in a school-based nursery as well. So they would be experiencing life inside a school, but not all local authorities, not all schools across the country would have that. But some schools where I've worked at have had nursery where children can be in there as well.
That must be quite helpful. I guess that's when we start thinking about children who've missed out on stages of development. In our case, we'll be thinking of many children who may be, let's say, beyond an early years age and maybe 7, 8, 9, but still potentially could be operating at those much younger milestones. So I guess there are sort of series of statements, are there, of what something might look like if a child's met a milestone. So in like social development, would there be a statement that says the kind of things you need to look out for to show that they can, let's say, take turns or
Yeah,
work
so
or interact with others?
within those statements as well, yeah, there are lots of school-based resources as well that can break these down into even smaller um, milestones as well. And again, for some older children further up the school, if they've missed certain milestones at some point, then if it's within a school where there is an early years, then the children can sometimes access that as well. So in the past, I've had some older children who might come down and do a little job just to help out, or yes, they can also use some of our resources that can be taken further up the school as well. Sometimes it might be in an ELSA session with one of the lead adults in the school who's supporting children with emotional difficulties as well.
The idea of doing a little job, that kind of
Yes.
come
It's
down
a
and
good way of
help
They
them.
they
disguising it.
they
Yeah.
love doing a
You've
little
got to be
job, and they don't know that it's for them. They think they're helping the adult in the school, but obviously we're doing that 10-15 minute activity with them to help them. They might feel like they're guiding or supporting the younger children, but actually it's helping and supporting them at the same time.
And I do really like it when it is possible for schools and early years provision to work in that way, because many of our children do find it easier to relate to younger children because they're emotionally and socially not in line with their peers. They can often find it difficult to make friends their own age or sustain friendships with children their own age. And so, if we are able to offer those little jobs where they perhaps help us with younger children, then it's also enabling them to have social connection with children who are perhaps more in line with them in a non-shaming way, so
Absolutely.
they can still get that connection. And I think that's a really lovely
Yeah,
idea.
so those children where their chronological age differs slightly to maybe their emotional age as well. So they can almost be on a similar level with those children that they're going to visit to support, but they can also act as a bit of a role model for the younger children to look up to as well.
I think perhaps where I'm not confused, but an area that I don't really know about is we've spoken about milestones, and we know that there's variation, and we do know that children who've had adverse early life experiences will be possibly delayed in achieving those milestones. Um, do does early years provision consider special educational needs as well? Like, is there a role for SEN in the early years?
Absolutely,
Do we
yeah,
have a register?
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think potentially, particularly, I've worked in school-based early years classrooms and settings. There's always a Senko within the school anyway, but predominantly it's usually the early years where we start to identify some of these needs that children have got anyway. But potentially children haven't been anywhere before. They've been either with their birth family or so other responsible adults who've been looking after them. And they might consider that there may be a need, but then they've not been able to they've not been signposted in the right direction. But then once they're within school, there's always a lot of experienced staff um, within the classrooms, and yes, we're able to support families. Sometimes we might have to have a tricky conversation to identify this for them. But in my experience, so a lot of families potentially have always or possibly identified something beforehand, and then we can support them. So it's working, hand in hand with them.
You took me right back then to when my daughter first started, and I'd forgotten, but I do remember now feeling acutely aware that this was the first time that I'd seen her in a group of her peers regularly, and that she was surrounded by experienced staff. And I do remember thinking, what if they see something that I've not?
Mhm.
Or do you know what I mean? Because I know my daughter. I don't have the back catalogue
Yeah,
that many of the staff will have the experience to see what would be well, you can't see inverted commas on a podcast, but what's normal and what isn't normal. So I guess that is possibly the first time where experienced staff who have seen a lot of children perhaps might pick up something that a parent without that experience wouldn't. So
And
yeah.
yes, as an experienced member of an early years team, there are still some things that I probably haven't seen before, but there are a lot of behaviours, a lot of telltale signs that we might witness either in one-to-one sessions or small group sessions or larger group sessions, whether it's inside or outside or a toileting issue. There are lots of different things that we have all seen before, and I would hope that lots of early years staff across the city, the county, the country, so have got the right way of approaching families as well to discuss potentially their concerns or what they've observed.
That kind of leads me on to thinking, it's probably from like a more personal perspective. I'm not sure how much use it will be to people listening, but it's kind of how much of the job is about managing parents or caregivers, perhaps, because as I say, I do remember feeling some anxiety that it's the first time my child, there might be something that's different about it that I'd not yet noticed, but also it was very hard to see her walk in. I felt very emotional about it. She hadn't been home very long, and here I am handing her over for a number of hours before I pick her up again. So I know that the whole starting was very emotional for me. So, as staff, is there a lot of managing kind of parents' emotions around their children attending earlier settings?
For me, there is, yeah. It's I always think of it as like a triangle. So I'm one point on the triangle, the child is another point on the triangle, and then the parent or the caregiver as the other point on the triangle. So we're all working together. I always want to develop a good, strong relationship with the family. It's not always going to be the one caregiver who does the collections or drop offs. There's always going to be, so there's always at least one other person. Sometimes it might be grandparents, sometimes it could be, I've had older siblings as well, who are grown up. But yeah, grandparents, it's always nice to have them turn up for collections as well. But yeah, I think we try to manage, especially that the first drop off, we try to manage that really well by doing a lot of pre-visits, a lot of transition visits as well. So the younger they are, sometimes I try to get them either in smaller groups and one-to-ones where parents and caregivers can come at the same time, and then gradually they can start to pull away. They can observe and see that the children are enjoying the setting, and start to make some friends as well. So that on that first day where they do have to do the drop off, it doesn't pull on as many heartstrings as possible. But they will, and we've always got a box of tissues as well.
I'm also remembering that my drop off was immediately post COVID, so we weren't able to do any of that. You literally had
It
to
was,
stand back
yeah,
and let them kind of wander in. So it's good to know that it's
yeah,
different. Yeah, but it's drawing my mind in so many different directions talking to you, because as you were speaking about transitions, is there flexibility for children who might need more than the normal transition offer? I'm thinking about many adopted children, they might not have been home very long, they might struggle with
hmm
separation, they've experienced a lot of moves, and attending their first early year setting is going to be another significant, or even if it's their second early year setting, because they've had one when in foster care or with birth family, it's another big thing
hmm
for them, isn't it? So is there flexibility in how children can prepare for this transition?
absolutely. I mean, in the early years, when I've worked in nursery rooms or in reception classrooms, we've always been mindful of that as well. And if there is any flexibility, so we can be as flexible as needed. Some children, it might just be they come for the first half hour, then we might up that to an hour. and then we can up it again to, so for a morning session. Some children, so a nursery child can do a 30-hour provision, which entails the whole day stay if they want to. So we can start off as small or as big as we need to. And I think it's mainly more in the nursery. In reception, obviously, children usually have had some preschool experience anyway. So coming to a reception classroom isn't as daunting as it could be on the very first time when they're leaving the family home. But I still have had some children where they've needed maybe just a couple of hours in the morning and then get picked up, or they do a morning session, or they come for an afternoon session. So in my experience, so we've tried to meet the needs of the child rather than the child having to meet the needs of the school. But obviously, I know that's just the schools where I've worked. It's not going to be the same all over the country. I would like to think it was.
No,
But
we've talked a lot about variation on this podcast, Michael. We really have.
Yeah.
But I think
Well, some schools do have a bit of flexibility, don't they? Some of them do a part-time start at the September,
Mhm.
and let them come in for short periods of time. Some parents don't like that though, because they want to get to work and they can't fit it around it, so they end up getting straight in full time from day one. But of course, in reception, you don't hit statutory school age till you're 5 years old anyway. So there's no one's going to be in trouble if you did have some sort of flexible arrangements at the early start. It's much more important to get it right than having to backtrack and then try and repair a mistake where it was too much too soon.
Am I right in thinking? I think I am, but I'll double check as I have people who know in the room with me. That school's not compulsory until the term that they turn 5.
Yeah.
So if your child's birthday is, say, in
Mhm.
August, then it wouldn't be compulsory for them to attend until about the June time before, when they're about to turn 5. Is that?
Yeah.
oh, it's got very
Yeah.
technical.
Well, it depends
So,
if it falls
yeah.
in which academic year they
It can.
fall
Yeah.
into.
There's
Oh, does it?
some ambiguity. So some of the things that I've always thought, I've had that challenged by other people as well.
Right.
So but it definitely is around their 5th birthday. Some
Yeah.
people say that it's the term when they turn 5. I've had people say to me it's the term after they turn 5, and some people have told me
Right.
it's as soon as they turn 5. So
It's
No,
around
nobody
it's
knows.
around that time. So again,
Yeah.
using your example, if they were August, for some people they would imagine it could be from Easter. For some people,
Yeah.
they might interpret
Oh,
it.
of course, it wouldn't be June. That's the
Yeah,
half term, isn't it?
some
Sorry.
people
Yeah,
would,
Easter.
so identify it as being on their birthday, which is in August. But some people would identify it as being after they've turned the term after they've turned 5, which would be the 1st of September.
So I think kind of you've spoken to us, and I'm learning a lot, but about the benefits and about how it all works really. And I know that from Jason and Lisa, we've talked quite a bit about the needs that adopted children have, and education settings understanding that. So I suppose my question to you, Michael, really is: do early years provisions understand that adopted children might have additional needs by virtue of the things they've experienced?
I want to say yes. I can't say for everyone, but it is something that I feel is being more highlighted within schools. I think, particularly post-COVID, I think schools are a lot more aware now than we may have been historically. I think myself coming from a fostering background as well, I think I'm more aware than I think maybe some other members of staff that I've worked with are as well. And when we talk about children's chronological age and it can differ slightly from potentially their emotional age as well, but also how either pre-birth trauma or any post-birth trauma as well can affect how children are going to interact with their peers and with other adults. So for me, I feel I'm aware of that, but I think that I would imagine that maybe there are schools and earlier settings where they might not have as much experience dealing with that as well. But I think there are a lot more schools now with ELSA support in the school, and I think the adults who work in those teams are a lot more supportive and able to assist classroom teachers and teaching assistants and other adults who work with the early years children, particularly if they've got any ACEs.
I think that's really helpful, and I think it's broadly in line with kind of what Jason and I have said in the past about primary and secondary. I spoke before about we can sometimes see teachers or staff as being the experts because they do have the experience of seeing all these children and this, that, and the other. But that doesn't mean that we should assume that they know everything or know everything that we would wish them to know. And so, as parents, we shouldn't be afraid of starting those conversations about the impact of trauma on our child. Not in a kind, we shouldn't assume that they know, but we shouldn't be afraid of kind of acting the expert about our child and actually what their life experience has mean to them, because actually the staff might not know, and they might not know what this means for them. So, yeah.
Yeah, because they might start responding in behaviourist ways, whereas actually it's not as developmental issue, isn't it? Mistaking some behaviours for, let's say, misbehaviour, which actually isn't. So yeah, I think having that conversation quite early on and saying, I wonder if you know about the background of my child. Have you had much experience, or with looking after supporting children from a care experience background?
Yeah,
And
I think in my experience, when I've had any children who are either new to an adopted family or they've been in an adopted family for a short while, or part or bigger part of their short life, I've always tried to make sure that I've had some of these conversations before they start in school as well, so that they can share any experiences that they may have seen or that's anything in the children's caseload that they feel is worth letting us know about. But again, that's the start of building those relationships.
I think I'll take from that, Michael, that we should only be encouraging our parents to send children to early years provisions where you've worked. That's what I'm going to.
yeah,
Because we can say with confidence that they get it. That's what we'll do.
Yeah, I mean, so the lovely thing is, I'm just thinking back to a family that I worked with years ago, and they had a little boy and a little girl come into their lives. They were 3 and 4, and yeah, so through no fault of their own and things, but they joined this lovely, lovely family, and I now know that 3 and 4-year-old, they are 19 and 20, I think now, and they are flourishing. But when we first met them, we had meetings just to find out, I think they'd only been with their new family for a couple of months before they came to school. But it's getting to know the children as well as you can and become a trusted adult. So yeah, there are success stories.
And I think that role of trusted adult is so important because we talk a lot about children having like felt safety. We know what feeling unsafe does to children and kind of how their brains work in those moments, and it's horrible to recognize when children do feel unsafe in education environments, and the role of a trusted adult, I think, is really undervalued sometimes. Just having that one person who is properly trusted can make an entire environment feel a lot safer for our children.
Hmm.
I was going to say, thinking about that that issue of being a trusted adult, and how do you deal with those children who have massive separation anxiety and really struggle to sort of be let go at the, at the start of a day or whenever they are dropped off? What sort of things do schools try to do? Because that must be quite a nightmare. You've got the screaming, yelling, clinging child, and
Yeah, there are a lot of different things in our arsenal, shall I say. We we can try. There's the first thing that we can do, distraction techniques. Um, I've had a welcome bear before for children who are coming in. So it could be a welcome bear that, either one that we've already got within the nursery, it could be one from home, it could be a new one that they've received as well. In the past, I've sprayed it with a certain scent that is familiar for them as well, so that every morning the bear will greet them at the door. They can cuddle the bear and get them across the threshold. It can also be, so they might want to wait for a friend to come to the door as well. We've had else have I done? I've done a cup of tea and a biscuit for a child before. So every morning they would arrive and they would have a cup of tea and a biscuit, maybe with a very familiar adult. They could go off and just have a little bit of downtime and calming time, because a nursery can be a very busy place. I've been in some nurseries where we've had 39 children, and that's not even the biggest that I know of. So they can be allowed space, and for a child who is struggling to separate at the door, you just need to find that little gem, that little thing that they want, that they need, that they might not even know what they want or need. They might not be able to communicate to you. So it's working, developing that relationship, becoming again that trusted adult, or one of the trusted adults that they can seek. It's like I say, it's finding that special thing and letting them feel special as well. But then also there's the aftermath of that as well. So for the parents, it can feel very, very daunting for them. It can be a stressful 5, 10, 15 minutes in the morning trying to pull away. I've always tried to communicate with them afterwards, just say, everything's okay, we're doing well.
As someone who's been on the receiving end of that message, I thank you, because it really was helpful to know that 10 minutes later she was okay.
Yeah, and I will say 99.999% of the time, those children who you get tears grabbing onto mum or dad's jacket, or refusing to come in through the door, after 5 minutes, they are always fine. There are some where it takes half an hour, and we've got an array of different distractions for them that we can use within the setting. But I would say I've never had to send a child home when they have struggled to come in.
What does, I mean, you started to touch on it there really with key adults and learning the child and finding that little gem that works for them, and flexibility, and really, co-parenting, in that then you let parents know they're okay. But what else would you say, if anything else, makes practice within early years trauma informed? What else can early years settings be doing to support those children who've had those aces in their early years?
I mean, so the biggest thing that I would say to anybody, to parents and caregivers, but I would also say to teachers and adults working with children is to develop those relationships. And there's a lot of different ways around that. It can be finding what the child is interested in. So a lot of young children, I know I had a big group of boys a couple of years ago who loved micro machines or Hot Wheels. So we had plenty of Hot Wheels for them. And once you've got that, I'll lie down on the floor next to them. We will be whizzing the car around as it's going to the supermarket or fighting a baddie or this, that, and the other. And it's once that child knows that you're playing alongside them and engaging with them in that game, they'll open up and they don't realize it. And they will tell you what they're feeling or what they want to do or what they want to do next. And it's finding that those little things, that little interest that they've got. It could be that they go, I don't know, they might go swimming on Tuesday nights. They might go to a football thing, or it's finding out what their interests are. But then you can start talking to them as they're coming in the morning, and building that relationship is key for young children, in my opinion. But then trying to be trauma informed as well, it's realizing that some of the behaviors that you might observe aren't, and I'm doing air quotes again, misbehaving, but actually it's them communicating in a way because they don't know how to communicate what they're thinking or feeling just yet, purely because of their age. And for very young children, they might not even have any words or very little vocabulary.
That made me think about what else practitioners might do. So I've encountered many children for all kinds of reasons who might struggle, who don't have any words, let's say, yet. Might be because of a language delay, or English is an additional language, but for example, children with trauma just may not have yet learnt, or maybe elective mutes. There's all kinds of things that happen. So what kind of alternative ways of communicating do staff try to use?
I mean, for young children, one of the biggest things that we can use as well are stories. So we can use storybooks, and there's a lot of different books that we can use. Either we can get lists from the internet. We've got, again, I will talk about the ELSA teams that I've worked with in schools. They've got a bank of different stories that might relate to different emotions and some other scenarios. But then also some children, might be able to draw pictures, or they can, or select from some photographs. So there are different ways that we can try to encourage children. But again, we're not the experts. So if we need any further advice, then there are ways and places that we can go to get that extra support that we need as well. Like I say, because I'm not the expert in it, but I do know enough to support the children as well.
I do like the use of stories and pictures. I think it can help children, as it's not as direct as talking about themselves. That's a really helpful thing. But also, if a child isn't able to kind of easily communicate what it is that's going on for them, once we've kind of started to engage with a story or some artwork, we can use that as a springboard and perhaps do some wondering and attempt to name things for them, can't we? So it's a really
so use for younger children and things, and it's something I've been using for a few years now, and it's called the Shrek approach. So it's about shared responses. So it's getting down to the children's level, eyesight. It's responding to what they're saying. It's being empathetic. It's that professional wondering as well, and using I wonder. And again, it could be saying, I think you might be feeling X, Y, or Z. because I've seen you doing this, and I could be wrong. And then, so sometimes if children have got the vocabulary, then they can acknowledge that. If they haven't, but then we can almost like co-regulate alongside them as well. But one thing that I've just started using recently, we've been using AI a little bit more to just do some prep work, to write some stories as well, and it will create a social story about potentially a child who might be snatching toys from one of their peers. So I've been able to create a social story, and then I can incorporate the child's name into it as well. But then different AI platforms can almost create a little character that looks similar to that child as well. So if they're in a school-based setting, then we can get them wearing the same colour uniform. They might have the same colour hair, and there's different ways around that, so they can recognise themselves in the story, but it's not really them. Or we can just use them in that sort of way. But I've had a few children in the past who like and respond to a social story, and then if we see some of that behaviour happening again, we can say, "Oh, let's go and have a look at that." Ooh, so it says that sometimes you might be feeling like this, and that's okay, but this is what we need to do next as well.
This is going off piece completely, because I've had something pop into my head. But we do know that one of the things that can help our children feel quite safe is that structure and that routine. And I think it's possibly one of the things that scared Lee about having 39 small children running around, is there would be no structure or any routine because they're all madly doing their own chaotic thing. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I'm just wondering what does routine look like with so many little people who haven't got full control of their emotions or their social skills or any of that? Like, what does it look like?
So in a lot of the settings that I've worked in, I've always tried to keep structure so that children can anticipate what is going to happen throughout the day, and I use a visual timetable for the children as well. So there's a visual timetable for the whole day, and they're aware of it. Might be carpet time, it might be a little bit of exploring or busy time, where they're going off and using some of the continuous provision activities that are in the classroom or in the setting. But then there's usually some enhanced activities as well that might be adult led. So sometimes it might be something related to counting or nursery rhymes. It could be something where they're doing a craft thing that's being led by an adult as well. So they're still learning, but it feels like it's a play activity as well. But carpet times can be stories, it can be singing nursery rhymes, it might be looking at some images and pictures if there's a celebration day happening as well. And earlier on we talked about children loving the fact of bringing something in from home. So a lot of places still do show and tell. Or if it's a child's birthday, I always love to I get the children to stand up on my teacher chair, and then we sing happy birthday to them. And it's done in such a playful way that the children want to be engaged in those types of sessions as well. So having that structure throughout the day is really, really important. But then for some children, that visual can be quite overwhelming. So the idea of the whole day. So for some children who struggle with the idea of the whole day, I can use a shortened version. So I could use a now and next board. So now we're going to be sitting on the carpet with a story, but next you're going to go off so you can play outside. And then when they go to outside, that moves. And then so after we've been outside, then we'll be washing our hands because it'll be snack time. So then they've only got to worry about what's happening after now.
And I'm also guessing for some children, knowing that your snack times and your lunch times are at regular time, that's also going to be a big part of their safety structure, isn't it? Of knowing where when that's coming. So I guess those are pretty similar times every day, just to help with
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're at set specific times so that they realise, oh, after I've been at school for a little while and things, we're going to sit down and we'll have our milk and we'll have some fruit or a snack or something. And then we'll do a little bit more playing. Oh, and then I'll have my lunch. And then I'll go back to the classroom. Oh, we'll do a bit more playing. Or then we'll have maybe an afternoon snack and a story. Then we'll do a bit more playing. Oh, and then it's home time.
It's like a day at
You've
work.
sold it. I mean, that sounds like a great routine up there.
But it chunks everything down. So I've always found that chunking things into small, manageable bits, early years children thrive on that. They know this bit happens, then we do this bit, and if you can follow the same or similar structure day in day out, the children just start to thrive more from that.
So, Michael, I suppose really to bring us to a close with this, one question for you. I know we've asked you a lot, but the last question is, if there were early years practitioners listening to this podcast, what's one thing that you would like them to think about more when supporting children, especially adopted children, but children in general?
I think for me, particularly working with younger children, the biggest thing would be relationships. Develop those relationships with the child, develop the relationships with the family or their main caregivers. Because once you're all on the same page, you can start to all work together and you can find ways to help the children to thrive.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Michael. Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. We hope this episode has given you a clearer understanding of early years development and the vital role relationships play in supporting young children. Join us next time for more conversations and insights.